Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for checking out my micro lesson. The topic of today is an introduction to periodization for collegiate athletes. And the objective is to introduce these various forms of periodization that have been most historically used, as well as researched, to then be able to build off of that into some newer methodologies and then get into the day-to-day programming of a strength and conditioning program. So in previous lessons, we've discussed all the different variables that need to be considered when designing a strength and conditioning program. So today we start putting all of that together and into a plan. What that is called is periodization. Periodization attempts to provide adequate recovery while preventing detraining. So it's a constant back and forth with this general adaptation syndrome provided by Hans Selye. There's a stimulus. We have an initial drop in performance while we recover, hopefully sufficiently, and we are then able to perform at a higher level. And then we want another stimulus prior to detraining occurring. All these periodization models that we'll talk about today start really with cycles. The original macro cycle was a quadrennial. It's for 4 years so that everybody could perform at their peak level in the Olympics. Now we typically think of this as a training year from the beginning of an off season until the end of the competitive season. So this starts with that macro cycle, a training year, and is then within that, we then have mesocycles. And you see these listed on the right: preparatory, transition 1, competitive, and transition 2. And underneath that, we've got our microcycles, which typically last anywhere between 7 to 14 days. And then further, we have our individual training sessions, which is programming. The first periodization model we'll talk about is linear. And this is originally from Matveyev and has been probably the most widely used and widely known model of periodization. We start with higher volume, lower intensity, and work through the different phases that are listed on the right. As we progress through those, volume drops, intensity raises, all to peak at the end of that quadrennial, that big macro cycle for the Olympics. The problem with this for team sport athletes is that you could run into a situation during a strength power phase where we lose hypertrophy endurance, which is something that a team sport athlete, certainly in college, may need to maintain throughout different periods of the year. So to battle that, we've got undulating or nonlinear periodization. We could go weekly or daily undulating periodization. Examples are right there on the graphs. And all this means is we're going to hit a different quality on a weekly or a daily basis. What we also have is concurrent. And this is very popular in the collegiate setting as well as the private settings for strength and conditioning and sports performance, because you're hitting multiple qualities on a regular basis or on a daily basis, where when we think of a team sport athlete, they will need to use that. And they practice that on a very often. So it could be, we've got some aerobic training, we've got some anaerobic training, we've got strength power exercises as the first exercise of the day, a basic strength exercise as a second exercise of the day or as a secondary movement, and then hypertrophy and endurance training for your accessory movements. So you can see how there are multiple qualities daily, which bode well for, especially when you've got short periods of time, 2 to 4 weeks before a preseason, we can train and hopefully improve multiple qualities all at once. Hope this was helpful. I'm looking forward to any feedback on both the content and the delivery. I appreciate your time. Thank you.